Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everyone. From the ETV Community Media Center, the end of summer is near. A Labor Day weekend is upon us. We are heading into September as well as the school year for many people. So I usually try to stay baseball focused and stay positive as much as I can. There's been times where I haven't been the best at that. And there was a situation a few months ago this season of something that I really was frustrated with that I ignored. I said it's not worth the airtime. The player is no longer in the league, was not a super prominent player, does not deserve the airtime on such a short, structured show like we have here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. And if you haven't been able to connect the dots there, D. Strange Gordon was on a podcast, and he talked about how he got suspended for steroids because the year before he prevented Bryce Harper from winning the Triple Crown in the last game of the season by winning the batting title. Now, D. Gordon, Flash, was a fun player for a minute in Major League Baseball. He's a much better baseball player than me. But what he did by saying that, by giving all the hints essentially without saying Harper's name, it was my batting title year. He was going to win the Triple Crown. He won the MVP. All of those things connect to Bryce Harper. It's just really funny because anybody with a smartphone or a laptop or however you may be listening to this could just simply look up the National League leaders in the big three Triple Crown categories. And yes, D. Gordon beat out Bryce Harper for the batting title. It wasn't in a one-game difference in batting title. And the bigger thing on top of that was that Bryce Harper was fourth in the National League in RBIs and almost 30 behind Nolan Arenado, who led the league. So going into the last game of the season, Bryce Harper was nowhere near the Triple Crown. He was more than a game's worth of at-bats away from D. Gordon for the batting title, and he was a month's worth of RBIs away from Nolan Arenado. So it's just a bone-faced, clout-chasing lie that D. Gordon said with his chest on a podcast. He had a mic in front of him, and he did it. I decided to ignore it. But then lately in my feed, a man who I believe should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, Gary Sheffield, someone who's in the 500 home run club, one of the most iconic batting stances of the last quarter century, was on a podcast as well. And he talked about how in 1992, for the San Diego Padres, how he expected and was told that he was going to win the MVP. He flew out to New York with his family, and allegedly Barry Bonds walked in with his dad, and he knew that he wasn't getting the award. That was kind of the story of how he was told he was going to win the MVP, and then it soured him because they gave it to Bonds. Well, I also have a phone, have a computer. I can look up what actually happened in 1992. It was before I was born. In 1992, Barry Bonds led the National League in wins above replacement by over a full win at 9. Sheffield was almost 3 wins behind at 6.2. They weren't using WAR in the 90s. It wasn't a stat yet. I understand that. But just to give you an idea of who was the more valuable overall player. Now, if you get into the awards, Gary Sheffield did win the batting title that year with a .330 batting average, 6 points ahead of Andy Van Slyke from the Pittsburgh Pirates, and about 19 points ahead of Barry Bonds, who finished 7th with a .311 batting average. So both of them above 300 batting average, but Gary Sheffield did have the edge winning the batting title. On base percentage, Barry Bonds, this was before he was at the height of his walking powers. He had a .456 on base percentage. He was on base 45% of the time. Number 1 in baseball. And Gary Sheffield, 6th in the National League with a .385 on base. Very respectable, very good, but he was 6th. Bonds was 1. Slugging percentage. Barry Bonds, 624, led the National League. Sheffield was 2nd, 580. So it's not like you're splitting hairs. He is happily ahead, more than a game or two ahead, more than a series ahead of these statistics. On base plus slugging. Barry Bonds, 1080. Gary Sheffield, 2nd place, 965. In terms of games played, neither one of them played all 162. In terms of at-bats, neither one of them were top 10 in the league. In terms of runs scored, Barry Bonds led the National League in runs scored with 109. Gary Sheffield was tied for 9th with 4 other people at 87 runs scored. Hits, Gary Sheffield, because he didn't walk quite as much, had more hits. 5th in the National League with 184. So he didn't lead the National League in hits, but he had more hits than Bonds. Total bases. Gary Sheffield, 323. Led the National League. Barry Bonds, 295. A 300 total base season is a very, very good season. Bonds just missed that. And like I said, he led the league in on-base percentage and walks. Walks do not count towards your total bases. They count towards your on base, but not towards your total bases, which I've never understood. In terms of doubles, Barry Bonds was tied for 9th with 36. Gary Sheffield was not listed in the top 10. In terms of home runs, Bonds was 2nd in the National League that year with 34. 1 behind Fred McGriff, and Gary Sheffield was 1 behind him at 33. So you couldn't say Gary Sheffield, with the extra base hitting power, despite having more hits, was the better power hitter. RBI. Sheffield had 100, good season, was 5th in the National League. Bonds had 3 more RBI. 103 RBI, 4th in the league. Bases on balls, like I said, Barry Bonds led the league, 127 walks. Gary Sheffield, not listed. In terms of strikeouts, neither one of them were in the top 10. And in terms of stolen bases, Gary Sheffield had about 17. Barry Bonds was tied for 9th, but with 39. They used to steal a lot more bases back then. So he went 30-30 and had the on base and had all these things in his favor. And then when you start to look into the more deeper analytics, adjusted OPS, runs created, batting runs, all those things, Barry Bonds is number 1 in baseball. He deserved that MVP. So for Gary Sheffield to be like, oh, I only had so many errors that year. It was my best defensive year. I won the batting title. I thought I was winning the MVP. And it really soured him. And that's part of the reason why he didn't feel as friendly with the writers and everyone going forward in his career the rest of the way. Just doesn't add up. We can look at the history. Now, I can't put myself in Gary Sheffield's shoes and talk about the interpersonal relationships he had from 1992 on with writers in the clubhouse and on the streets and wherever else he may have ran into them. But for a player of Gary Sheffield's caliber that doesn't have anything to prove, in my opinion, doesn't matter that he doesn't have an MVP. Gary Sheffield has over 500 career home runs. The man has over 60 career WAR. 5-time Silver Slugger, won that batting title, 9-time All-Star, has a World Series ring from the 1997 Florida Marlins. 2,689 career hits, scored over 1,600 runs in his career, drove in over 1,400 runs in his career, stole 253 bases. Career OPS plus of 140. Gary Sheffield was a problem. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But for a player of his prominence that doesn't have to say something like this to stay in the modern eye, to stay relevant like D. Gordon, which is why I didn't want to give him the time on the show, it's just funny that these players get a mic in front of them and think that they have to tell a story, they have to tell something scandalous, and instead of rooting from truth, they're rooting from their perspective or the lie that they've taught themselves, or they're lying for clout. And it's an epidemic, I think, in social media in general, but especially with these interviews where players are coming onto these podcasts. It seems like some of these guys, I don't know if they're prompting them like, hey, like, tell us a story you haven't told anywhere else, or could you get into this, or could you get into that? I'm not necessarily blaming the podcasters all the time, because the players have free will to say whatever they want to say when that mic is in front of them. They had mics in front of them their entire careers as baseball players, so they know the drill. I just could not believe that Gary Sheffield said that. He could say that he feels like he deserved that MVP, but for him to say that Major League Baseball told him he was winning, he flew his family out there, and he got that even though like he was had won the batting title, was close to the Triple Crown, had his best defensive year. The statistics don't back that up, Gary. And it's so easy for a player to remember something a certain way, or to be coached into saying something, or to just say it for the clicks. So I'll leave a link to that clip in the description below, and give me your opinion on what Gary Sheffield said and this kind of growing problem with people lying on podcasts. Now, the Phillies, I'm rocking their jersey today. They were my World Series pick. Zack Wheeler officially out for the season. He had a blood clot in his lung. Very scary thing. Had a procedure. Appears to be doing well. Plans to pitch in 2026. But that's a big blow for the Philadelphia Phillies and this core that, in a lot of ways, is their last chance at the World Series as currently constructed. Zack Wheeler was my pick for Cy Young this year. He had 5.2 WAR, had a 10-5 record, a 2.71 ERA, 24 starts, 149 innings, gave up 107 hits, 48 runs, 45 of them earned, 19 home runs, walked 33 batters, and still leads the National League with 195 strikeouts, was well on pace to have a 200 plus strikeout season. His ERA plus 165, which matches his 2024 total when he was the Cy Young runner-up. Zack Wheeler, I don't know if he's going to be in the Hall of Fame because of bulk, but one of the best pitchers of the 2020s. You can go past that in the late 2010s. He was still very, very good. But to just make it a round number, one of the best pitchers of the 2020s. Said he was going to retire at the end of this contract. Now misses out on important innings to try to win the Cy Young away from Paul Skeens, as well as the Phillies playoff push while Kyle Schwarber is still under contract, while Nick Castellanos is still under contract, while they have the pieces in place. It's a big blow. But I still believe in this Phillies team. And it's not just because of Kyle Schwarber's amazing game that we'll talk about at the end of the show. It's because this team has learned to win together, and Dave Dombrowski has learned that you need depth to win a World Series. And if you look at their starting rotation in terms of Christopher Sanchez, who's going to be a Cy Young finalist, Jesus Luzardo, Ranger Suarez, and Taijuan Walker, who's played a big role this year with Nola missing time and now Wheeler. They've all been pitching really solid. High 2s and 3s ERAs. They're keeping them in games, and the Phillies offense is relentless. Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, they do not stop. And I'm very, very still confident in this Phillies team when this is as bad of an injury as a team can have. Your true ace pitcher going down a month before the postseason. The trade deadline's over. You can't trade for another starting pitcher or front-end guy. You have to work with what you got the rest of the way. I think the Johan Duran trade is a big part of the reason why I'm still in. Having that closer at the back end is going to be important, as good as the rotation has been. And while I pray for Zack Wheeler to have a speedy recovery, it was a very scary thing that he went through. He will be back, and this Phillies window will continue as long as he is manning the top of this rotation with the depth behind him. But big blow for the Phillies. gives the Mets a chance to catch them in the division race with some reinforcements that have been answering the call lately. Like I said, we're past the trade deadline. You cannot add to your team in that way. You have to either take people off the scrap heap, or you have to call up prospects, young players with very little major league experience, and put them right into a playoff race, put them right into big games. Every single game down the stretch matters here. Every single division, essentially, except for the AL Central, is separated by single-digit games. You need to win more than you lose the rest of the way. The Mets have done a great job. Their rotation was spotty this year. It's part of the reason why I did not choose them to be a playoff team. I really like their offense. Their offense has been great all year. But adding a Nolan McLean and a Jonah Tong, who have risen through the minors like rocket ships this year, to a struggling rotation, and being as successful as they have been with missing bats, with not walking people, with not allowing runs, if one of those two can keep it up down the stretch, that's a huge win. But if both of them do, the Mets might go from a team that I thought was going to just miss the playoff to a team that wins the World Series. That kind of thing is huge. The Red Sox just called up their top pitching prospect. Peyton Tolley made his debut against the Pirates last night. Fortunately, the Red Sox offense was quiet after a Roman Anthony home run off Paul Skeens and was not able to win that game. The bullpen blew it. But Peyton Tolley, 8 strikeouts in 5 1/3 inning. He looked like a legit starter for them down the stretch, better than what they've been getting from Dustin May, better than what they've been getting from Richard Fitz, better than what they've been getting from Walker Buehler, who was just outright released yesterday. He answered the call and is ready to pitch meaningful innings for the Red Sox down this postseason stretch. So then it comes back to the Phillies. The Phillies have only had 9 pitchers start games for them this year. They've been relatively healthy in terms of major league standards. Most teams are well into double digits for pitchers that start games. They have Mick Abel, who has been really good in his spot starts this year, down in the minor leagues, who can answer the call and pitch meaningful innings for the Phillies down here in the stretch in Zack Wheeler's replacement. They have Aaron Nola coming back from injury, who had not been his old self, but has big game experience to answer the call. And they also have Andrew Painter, who I snuck into the thumbnail. Now, Andrew Painter entered the season as the number 2 pitching prospect because they gave Roki Sasaki prospect status. I don't know why they do that with the professionals from other countries. But Andrew Painter, for all intents and purposes, entered the year as the number 1 pitching prospect in baseball. He has struggled at AAA this year. He's been very inconsistent. But Andrew Painter has top-of-the-line stuff. And if he finds himself spot starting to give a guy some rest, to give a guy an extra day, to fill in for an injured Zack Wheeler, whatever they see his role being, I think Andrew Painter, much like McLean, much like Tong, much like Tolley, can answer that call and help the Phillies continue this push towards their first World Series championship since 2008. I'm still confident in the player. I think he's someone that in your fantasy baseball leagues, if you have big benches, is worth a stash. And they're calling up pitching prospects left and right, both the teams that are in it and the teams that are not. Bubba Chandler has looked good for the Pirates. There's been so many young pitchers getting this opportunity here, and especially once September 1st rolls around, the active roster moves up from 26 to 28. So teams might carry a 6th starter. Teams might carry an extra arm in the bullpen from their young core. And I think that once that happens, September 1st, you're going to see even more of these impact young arms called up and make a difference down the stretch here where every game matters. Now, here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, with a throwback down the third baseline to this day in baseball history. And August 30th had quite a few great games that happened. It's a birthday to the late Ted Williams, Hall of Famer. But I want to talk about a tale of two careers because one began and one ended on this date in baseball history. We're going to throw it back all the way to this day in 1905. In his first major league at-bat, 18-year-old center fielder Ty Cobb doubled off Hall of Famer Jack Chesborough in the first inning of a Tigers 5-3 victory at Detroit's Bennett Park. The two-bagger was the first of 4,189 hits the Georgia Peach would collect during his 24-year Hall of Fame career. Now, I've talked about Ty Cobb. I know he has the Georgia Peach moniker as kind of a sarcastic nickname, but he's a little bit misunderstood. And if you read some literature, you will find out that Ty Cobb was not necessarily always that bad, though he did have some bad moments. 151 career WAR. As I said, he had 3 10-plus win seasons in his career. Over 2,200 runs scored. He led the league in runs scored 5 times. He led the league in hits 8 times to 4,189 career hits. He led the league in doubles 3 times, 724 career doubles. He led the league in triples 4 times, had 295 career triples. Led the league in RBIs 4 times, en route to 1,944 RBIs. I bet most of you didn't know that Ty Cobb almost drove in 2,000 runs. He led the league in stolen bases 6 times, 897 career stolen bases to only 215 caught stealings. That's a really good ratio. He walked almost twice as much as he struck out, 1,249 walks to 680 strikeouts. His .366 batting average for the amount of plate appearances he has is the best of all time. And he led the league in batting average a ridiculous 12 times, including winning the Triple Crown, he was unbelievable. Led the league in on-base percentage 8 times, career .433 on base. He led the league in slugging 7 years in a row, .512 career slugger, 168 OPS plus, and he won the 1911 Most Valuable Player Award. Ty Cobb's one of the greatest players of all time, and he got his start with a double off a Hall of Famer, nonetheless, on this date in 1905. On the flip side of the coin, a Hall of Fame career came to an end on this date in 1928 as the Gray Eagle, Tris Speaker, ended up striking out in his final major league at bat as Red Sox hurler and Hall of Famer Red Ruffing struck out the 40-year-old Philadelphia A's outfielder, ending his 22-year Hall of Fame career with a .345 batting average, which was the 6th best in Major League history upon his retirement. Tris Speaker, whose autograph is at the bottom of the scorecard, is, I think, one of the more overlooked all-time greats in baseball history. 134.9 career WAR, 3,514 career hits, so well over the 3,000 hit club. He scored over 1,800 runs in his career. He has the record with 792 doubles, all-time record. 222 triples in his career, 117 home runs, 1,531 RBIs. He stole 436 bases and was only caught 158 times. He walked over 3 times as much as he struck out. 1,381 walks to 393 strikeouts. Like I said, .345 career batting average is still top 10 all time. 428 on base, 500 slugging percentage, was 58% better than the league average hitter. And he won the MVP in 1912 for the Boston Red Sox. The Gray Eagle, Tris Speaker, Ty Cobb, the Georgia Peach, two of the greatest players of all time, especially center fielders. One of them started their career on this date in 1905, 120 years ago. And the other one ended his Hall of Fame career on this date in 1928, 97 years ago. Tale of two careers. One got a double off a Hall of Famer to jumpstart his Hall of Fame career. The other one got struck out and sent to ride the pine by a Hall of Famer to end his career. How can you not be romantic about baseball? Two all-time greats. I'd strongly recommend checking out their baseball reference pages and their Saber bios if you haven't already. Two of the all-time greats that everyone should have read about. And talking about all-timers, Kyle Schwarber had what most people would say is a night of their career. He hit 4 home runs against the Atlanta Braves, had a chance to hit a 5th, becoming the 21st player in Major League Baseball history to have a 4 home run game. What's crazy about that is before 2025, the last player to do this was JD Martinez, like 7 years ago. 2018 or 2019, JD Martinez had a 4 home run game. This season, Kyle Schwarber is not the second, but the third player to have a 4 home run game. There are less people with 4 home run games than there are in the 3,000 hit club. There are less people with 4 home run games than perfect games. There are less people with 4 home run games than 3,000 hits. This is a very rare occurrence, and we've gotten to see 3 of them this season, and there's still a month left to play. I'm calling for a 4 for 4. I don't know who's going to get it in this last month of the season, but I'm calling for a 4th player to do it. I know they say these things happen in 3s, but I'm calling a Wendy's 4 for 4. I think there's going to be a 4th one this season. With the way pitchers are attacking hitters, with the way hitters are approaching the plate, looking to hit it to the gap and have extra base hit damage, and with the amount of elite power hitters there are in today's game, I just have a feeling someone else is going to do it. Kyle Schwarber, 333 career home runs. The age of 32, he'll be 33 in March. He'll be a free agent. There have been talks of him returning to Philadelphia, which I think would be great. There's been talks of him coming back to Boston, which would also be great for his power numbers. I'm sure there will also be some other teams that have hitter-friendly ballparks that he signs with. Kyle Schwarber has a chance, depending on where he goes this offseason and depending on how he ages, to hit 500 career home runs. Now, if you look at the rest of his career, 785 runs scored, 1,030 hits, 172 doubles, 12 triples, 771 RBI, 37 stolen bases. He struck out twice as much as he's walked, and he walks a good amount. He is a true 3 outcomes hitter. Walk, strikeout, home run. If he gets 500 career home runs, he's going to be a Hall of Famer in most people's book, mine included. So I'm interested to see how he finishes the season. He currently is in the lead in the National League for home runs and RBIs, 49 home runs and 119 RBIs, excuse me. If he's able to end the season with 60 plus and 140 RBIs, like if he's able to have a 10 home run and 20 RBI month here to end the season, he's going to get some real consideration for big money this winter. And it's probably the best power hitter on the market. And it's very, very exciting. It's been a big part of the reason why I still believe in the Phillies is having that top of the lineup, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. These are guys that get on base. These are guys that do damage. and score runs, whether it be by the long ball or in Trey Turner's ability to just outrun you along the bases. I really, really like this Phillies team, and big props to Kyle Schwarber for a career night. I appreciate each and every one of you for spending part of your Solo Shot Saturday with me. If you enjoyed the show, make sure that you leave a like on the video, subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. For those of you listening on audio-only platforms, leave me a review. It really helps the show. And remember to share this show with a friend who loves the game of baseball as much as we do. I will be covering weekly topics as we approach the postseason. And then when we get into the postseason, I will be having episodes at the end of every single playoff round. So if that lands on a Tuesday, if it lands on a Saturday, doesn't matter. I will be recording and recapping the whole thing. You won't want to miss it. I'm Don Manna, and I'll see you guys next week.